Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to Rejuvi 45. If you're here, it's our guess that you've heard this phrase called modern leadership, and you have heard the associated phrases compassionate human leadership combined with fierce business leadership. These things resonate, and so you've come to hear more. Thank you for being here. You are in the right place. My name is Regina Hepp, and I am with Rejuvi. And today I am joined by
Sharon Christensen. Good to be here, Reg.
Sharon. How is it going?
It's going well. As Reg knows, I've been in the HR career field now for over 20 years. I won't get too specific to give my age away, but it's an ever evolving world, which is part of what I love, but also what keeps me on my toes. So sharing earlier, every day is a little bit different,
Yeah.
but that's what also makes it exciting.
Yeah. I think this is a true statement. I think that for as long as you have been working in HR, you and I have known each other.
Mhm. Yep. I think maybe I had one internship before I met you.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. All
I was
right.
in my infancy of my career. So
Right.
yes.
Well, I couldn't be happier to have you here. And for those who are checking in, and for those who are viewing our content, you are in for a real treat. Sharon was with us in I think season one or season two of Rejuvi 45. This is season four, so it's been too long since you've been here. So to kind of get you warmed up a little bit, because we have this fantastic topic called Just Jump. I'm going to put you in a little bit of an either or so folks can get to know you a little bit. Okay.
Okay.
Either a mountain vacation or a beach vacation.
Ooh, kind of depends on the time of the year. I'm going to say beach vacation though.
Okay. Dogs as pets or cats as pets.
Dogs,
Okay. Did not
hands
surprise
down.
me. The summer farmers market or the fall apple harvest.
Ooh, also both good choices. I'm going to say the farmer's market.
Okay. And last, roller coaster or bumper cars.
Ooh, bumper cars.
Okay.
Definitely bumper
I,
cars.
yeah, right? I mean,
Yeah.
is there
Yeah.
really another choice? Because at least you can control your destiny.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And I'm not spinning upside down. Yeah.
Well, hopefully not. Well, hopefully not. Well, so thank you for that. So we are here to we're in one of our last mixes of Rejuvi 45, and this whole last series of sessions is really about how do you move forward differently in your organization from a leadership development perspective. And today's topic is really starting to address kind of what's possible, and this is what's possible not from a content perspective, but from a human perspective in terms of the who. And I just couldn't think of anyone better to have on this particular episode than you, Sharon. So before we kind of get into a few specifics, when I use this phrase called the leadership table, and what it has meant to you and what it does mean to you. Can you describe some of those things for the audience today?
Yeah, so I think it's probably changed for me over the years, but I would say regardless of when, right, I picture just a table of leaders coming together, right? And I'd say it's a part of when I say it's changed over the years, early on for me, that was just a when I'd see leaders around a table, right, that was a place that I was like, oh, I want to be there, right? And how do I get there? And can I ever get there? And will that be me one day? And what will that look like, right? Um, and so I think it felt like that for me maybe early on as more of that like, I really, those were individuals that I looked up to and said I want to do that in my career at some point in time, right? And actually I moved there faster than I ever expected. But when I got there, then it was still a lot of looking around the table and saying, ooh, can I get where that person is, right? That person has what I see is a lot of influence, or right, they maybe provide a lot of clarity on the direction and vision of the organization, which I didn't really know how to do. And so each time I kind of looked around the table, I would look and say, okay, where am I and where are they and what do they know that I don't know? And
Hmm.
so I think, you know, for me, it was always looking at it like, how do I get there? How do I gain that knowledge, right? And if I maybe even go a little bit further and I look now, is thinking who's sitting around that table. Maybe I don't know if it's as I think about it, Regin, and just kind of thinking out loud. I don't know if it's really changed or just my perspective has changed. Because I'd say early on it was people that had direct reports is what I would view as a leader. And I think that's changed over the years and maybe takes on different forms of it is still those people, but maybe it's people also that are leading projects or that are mentoring others or right are leading maybe in a little bit different way than the traditional sense that I thought of when I was, you know,
Hmm.
21, 22, 23 years old.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, there's a lot to unpack there. And so I'm hearing at one point, you use you're looking in, right? You're outside the window and you're looking through the window kind of at this table, and you're wondering, okay, will that be me one day? And then you're at the table, and then there's this kind of sense of self-awareness and maybe even kind of self-doubt, like am I going to know what to do? Or you really start to become aware of what others do know how to do. And
Exactly.
you want to have that become a part of it. And then I think when you talk about your perspective changing, it's like I think once you're there, what I hear from you saying is your perspective changes and you realize the things that you need to be there are maybe different than what you thought. So one thing that I'm really kind of hearing about is this very consistent journey, this very simple learning process about what it feels like to become part of a leadership team, to become part of the leadership table inside of an organization. And one of the things that when I hear that, it reminds me so much of one of the stories I've been telling as I crisscross, you know, organizations and crisscross the country and talking about changes inside of leadership development. But I think that this picture, here's some old-fashioned document sharing, right? This
Hmm.
picture for today's
Yep.
session is one of my favorites of all 36 Rejuvi 45 sessions in every season. And that's because I think that everybody can experience the journey that you're talking about. And everybody looks, they're looking from outside the window, they're looking through the window at this table and saying, will that be me one day? And when they get this offer, right, when the offer comes to them, when they get this letter that says, we would like to formally offer you this role, it's like everybody is gleeful, right? It's just this exuberance, it's this excitement, because people work hard for these roles, and to be able to be selected to move into a leadership role is a really, really big deal.
It is, and I think it's it's an honor, and I think it's humbling as well, right? And as you said, you work really hard to get there,
Mhm.
and especially early in your career when you have those doubts about can I get there at some point,
Mhm.
right? So then to actually get to that,
Mhm.
step, which it's funny, at least for me early on, I'm like, oh, will I get there? And then little did I know that I was not even getting started at that point. Like that almost felt like the end goal at one point. I'm like, ooh, did I have a lot to learn yet, right?
Mhm.
About what else was out there, or what else was I capable of, right?
Mhm.
How else could I help other people get there?
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, it was, I remember that first, kind of leader role that I got, and it was a huge honor. And I was also humbled that they trusted me with that because now they're trusting me with other people and in a bigger way within their business.
Hmm. Yeah. So I want to, from
Yeah.
this kind of perspective of yours, this kind of this leadership, learning process, this leadership learning journey that you can articulate so well. I kind of want to fork out to two different possibilities. One of them is going to be this thing that you said about how your perspective has changed, and I want you to start talking about a little bit how you think about who's paid to lead. And then the other thing I want to fork out and talk about is what happens to 100% of the people who are super excited to be, whoa, jumping into this cool, wonderful water. What happens to them when they kind of get there? So we're gonna start with first how your perspective has changed. So when you talked about your perspective changed once you were at the table, what did you mean by that?
I think many things, and I think it continues to change. And so when I think, and maybe I'll go down just the like, what is a leader? And you can redirect me, Reg, if I go off in the on the wrong fork in the road. But I think, early on, I didn't really know what a leader was other than I was like, oh, I want to do that, right? And that maybe in some ways was even maybe what I felt like I should want to do. But until you do it, I don't know that you fully understand what it looks like. And one thing that, and this a little bit of a side note, but when I have people who haven't led who are like, oh, I want to be in a leadership role, I'm always asking them why, right?
Mhm.
Why do you want that? Is it
Mhm.
because someone told you you should and it's the next step, or is it because you really have a desire to, lead people, to help provide guidance and insight and, all of those things that we do in a leadership role,
Mhm.
because it's hard work, right? It's exciting, but it's also really hard. And so for people that maybe their heart isn't in it, I'm like, okay, is this really what you want? If it is, fantastic, and let's talk
Mhm.
about that. So
Mhm.
but I'd say as my career has gone, and I talked about this a little bit too, like I used to view leadership business, people have direct reports, they're giving them, some guidance and some vision and maybe coaching here and there, right? That was kind of what that looks like. As time's gone on, I think that's expanded and won in a little bit of who do I really see as leaders? And yes, absolutely, those that have people reporting to them are, but I also see people in a lot of more informal leadership type roles, whether it's they're leading a project, whether it's, say, a senior engineer who's mentoring a younger engineer or an intern, right? Providing them experiences, giving them direction, right? Those types of things. And then as I go further, and I read this article recently that was really, well, it was actually now probably feels recently, it's probably like 2 years ago. And they were talking directionally about how leadership oftentimes in organizations is changing. And part of it was around skill set, as they were saying, like, hey, we're identifying in the market that folks that are, typically very highly technical, right? So they're maybe your engineers, and I'll just kind of pick on that group a little bit, right? Maybe aren't as well skilled in the soft side, right? The quote unquote soft skills of leadership, which we probably don't talk about as much as we did, 15, 20 years ago. And so, we're seeing people in engineering roles promoted because they're really great engineers, but they don't necessarily know how to lead people.
Mhm.
Now, I would challenge it might just be because we haven't shown them how, not because they don't have the capabilities to do so.
Mhm.
But the article was challenging and saying, are they the same people? And do you have a people leader for those, hey, let me coach, develop, and grow you in kind of your career outside the technical? And then do you have a technical leader that's kind of teaching you how to be an engineer and how to be the best engineer?
Mhm.
And so it's been interesting kind of diving into that because one, just from the economics of it, I'm like, I don't know how companies pay two people to lead, right, in
Mhm.
that space. But also, how do you make those meld together? And I think over the last couple of years, I have seen some evolution in that, but maybe not in the formal way that that article was talking about, where they were truly talking about there's, two people specifically paid to lead. Instead, what I feel like I'm seeing more in industry is you still have your leader, and in those technical roles, frankly, they still typically are from a technical background, right? We're
Hmm.
not moving fully away from, I'm an engineer reporting to somebody who used to be in HR, right? Or used to be in ops or whatever. They still have technical acumen, but
Hmm.
now we're bringing in some other like higher level engineers to do some of, those more deep expertise to really help grow some of those technical skills in
Hmm.
some of the newer in career folks.
Hmm.
So those are just a few things. I could probably point to 100 other things that I've seen
Well,
evolve.
but I think I think it's the big one. And I think, so I think that how we think about who a leader is, has thankfully evolved. And I think that one of the things that we've always thought about is, and especially because inside of units that you and I have a lot of experience in, like human resources, you start thinking about leadership in terms of people leadership. And since human resources is a group that oftentimes you'll find the development units reporting through them, then as we move forward with our training processes and our curriculum to start to train on leadership, it goes down that road of how do you lead people? How do you lead a team? How do you give feedback? How do you deliver, how do you help write performance goals? How do you deliver performance reviews? It's all that kind of stuff. And those things are really important. And it's all falling underneath this realm of called people leadership. I think that there's been this other phrase that has started to, maybe it's emerged multiple times over the past several decades, but it's starting to it's you hear it a lot more, and it's called in the flow of work. And so for me, it's less about, okay, if you're human resources and you think about leaders, well, your work is about building people, healthy people processes inside the organization. So, of course, when you think about leadership, you're going to think about people. But if you're technology, you're going to think about leadership as providing leadership around tech or, et cetera. And so I think what this phrase called in the flow of work has started to do is to acknowledge, listen, we are, regardless of our roles, we're all there to drive the work of the flow of the work in the organization on behalf of how we see our customers. And in that context, there's so much leadership that's actually getting done. Sometimes it's the leadership of a product. Sometimes it's the leadership of tech and the subsequent products that fall from it. Sometimes it's the inspiration of the teams that are associated with rolling out the products across the organization. So, one of the things that I think has really happened is that there's been this really beautiful understanding, this powerful understanding of leadership, more in the context of flow of work on behalf of our customers. And now, how do we really start to harness and build momentum inside of that definition of leadership? That's kind of what I see actually happening. And because of that, I think that there are new models for how you can now start to move forward. So, for example, if you have 100% of the people who now have this offer letter, and they're woohoo, jumping forward, they're excited because just like you, they're saying, will that be me one day? And now they're saying, it's me. It is me, right? Now what do I do? I think that now these models have a better opportunity to start to serve all of those people who are so excited, right? So if you now are excited because you are moving into a team leader role, or an operational line supervisor role, there are models that exist for team leadership.
Yep.
Right? If you just got moved into, a service leader role, you are now providing leadership of all or a part of your customer experience inside your organization. You are moving into a leadership role, and there are models that can help us to understand what all of that looks like. That's, I think, what's so exciting is that the flow of work, that simple phrase, has pushed the organization to start to think about, wow, we've got to quit looking at stuff from our perspective of the organization. If I'm in human resources, I'm going to look at this from a people perspective, and the curriculums therefore will be about people management. If I'm looking at this from a technology perspective, it's going to be about product management or architectures. And that's how I'm going to think about leadership. Everybody's stepping back and to say, how do we look at this more holistically? And we need to take responsibility for communicating that and what really fantastic looks like for all leaders in the flow of work on behalf of the customers that we serve. That's what I think is actually happening.
I love that. And certainly, Reg, I'm one of those people that at times I get in my in my lane of hey, I'm in
Yeah,
HR and here's that focus, right? So
yeah,
I know that. At the same time, I love what you're saying because what I hear is leadership, and with that leadership development is really about the business, right? And it's about our customers and people that we're serving, right? And so how do we best do that? How do we best set up our people,
mhm,
regardless of what area they are, equip them in their roles,
mhm.
right, to do what they need to do, to serve their teams,
That's
but
right.
then really then also, their customers. And I think that's one of the, I think, big evolutions just around leadership and development that we just don't hear a lot of. And really, I don't think I heard it all 10 years ago
Mhm.
is, hey, I need to, as a leader, I need to develop my business skills, my business acumen, right? How do I, if I'm in a sales role, how do I close a deal, right? What does that look like? How do I
Mhm.
have these
That is
conversations around
ex
influence,
yes,
right?
absolutely. So that's kind of one fork I wanted to kind of go down, which was how your perspective of who's paid to lead has actually changed. And I'm kind of with you on that one. The other one is that I kind of wanted to go down a little bit about is how we've actually served them, how we've actually served these people in the past. So, people who have been around me often know that, when I talk about, in general, the kind of people that I like to work with, and I'm like, it's pretty simple, head, heart, and hands, right? Do you have some good ideas, and can you kind of get them outside of yourself? Are they driven by something, based on passion, your passion or somebody else's? And are you willing to kind of roll up your sleeves and kind of get to work and put some muscle into this? Head, heart, and hands. How can it be? And when I think of you, I think of all three of those components, head, heart, and hands. I mean, it's just, I think from the first time that we met, I was just like, wow, this is someone really, really special in terms of how I kind of size people up. So, when it comes to how we start to serve different people inside the organization, I want you to just to talk a little bit about how you've seen organizations, some of the best organizations, maybe best organizational experiences you've had around people really serving the head, heart, and hands of people at different levels of leadership inside an organization. When have you seen it at its best?
Oh, it's a really good question, Reg, because I think right in every organization I've been in, there's been things we've done really well, and then there's things that's like, oh, yep, we could have done that better, right? And I think there's a lot of learnings, I think that we all have that organizations have had over the years. But I think when I've seen organizations do that well, right? They are providing resources, again, not just to the top 1% or 5% of people, right? But they are providing these learning opportunities really as wide as they possibly can. And that's hard, right? Because a lot of times there are costs involved and there's time involved. And oh, by the way, those customers you talked about, we still have to deliver it to them. And we've got all these other things we need to do. But the organizations that I've seen do it the best really are investing in the masses, not just their top, couple of percent.
Mhm.
And when I've seen that, the reason that I point to that is you just see this exponential growth. You see more people excited, your picture of the two dogs running, right? Like I it never ceases to amaze me when I sit down with leaders and we do even sometimes some of the smallest development work, and they're just like sponges, right? And they want to learn and they want to grow and they want to get better at their jobs. And, there's times that I'll go and I'm like, oh, is anyone going to care about this? And the engagement, the questions, the dialogue, and
Mhm.
the conversation, I walk out like super energized. I'm like, I don't know what they got out of it, but I'm now really excited to go back. And
Now you're that
it's,
dog.
yeah,
Woo!
yeah, exactly. But it's because people really do want the tools in whatever manner that means, right? To do better and to provide more value within their roles, right, to the organization, to the people around them, whether it's a team they report to or a project team that they're managing or, to their customers,
Mhm.
right? And so when we've been able to, as an organization, equip them with those things, it's one of you just see so many people win from that. The individual wins
Mhm.
from that. Their peers oftentimes like can see like, oh,
Mhm.
that's really good. What they
Mhm.
just did, that was great. I want to do that, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then, the customer, whoever that is, obviously if they're recipient of, better quality work, better engagement, whatever that may be,
Mhm.
right? You see them win as well. So
Yeah. When you were on the show, season 2 of Rejuvi 45, you used this phrase and it stuck with me. And it was rather than solve for an N of one, solve for an N of many. What, why do you use that phrase?
it's funny because I remember using that and then you called it. I'm like, I didn't really realize I said it. But um, yeah, to me with that, so again, if I go in early in my career, now I was very, very lucky. I was with a large retail organization that did do a lot with development.
Mhm.
And so I'm grateful to this day because I received a lot of development that, I know others did not receive as they kind of went into these new roles, right?
Mhm.
At the same time, there were programs that were very, very exclusive. And it was, you again were that top, couple of echelons, right? And I would see things that were coming out of that they were getting these great learning opportunities. And I'm like, man, if we could all get that, imagine how much further we could be and how much
Mhm.
faster we could get there,
Mhm.
right? And instead, right, sometimes it created this competition between people too. And competition can be healthy sometimes, but other times it can be kind of unhealthy.
Yeah.
This I would say had both, right?
Mhm.
And that's where that to me is okay. If you help one person, that's great, that's
Mhm.
good. But now, if you can help a large number of people,
Mhm.
wow, I mean, isn't that better? How many of us wouldn't want to impact, 100 people
Mhm.
versus one person if we could?
Yeah, well, that it stuck with me. Solve rather than solve for an N of one, solve for an N of many. And I think for me, what I think in my career, and because I again these words head, heart, and hands, I don't just look for that in other people, but I kind of hold myself accountable to showing up with those things every day in my work as well. And so if we have 100% of the people, just like you in your leadership journey, saying, will that be me one day? And you have an offer letter, and you've got your chance and you're feeling good. Well, one of the very unfortunate things that we know is that almost all of them, like 93% of them, are saying, um, but I am not confident in the skill that I have to, nor do I feel like we have the culture to really get after the job that I am being asked to do. So we have this 93% confidence, skill and confidence problem stacked on top of 100% enthusiastic exuberance opportunity. And I think that that's the work of, this question around solving, rather than solve for an N of one, solve for an N of many. And the days of, I hear what you're saying about things can be competitive. Most people do not have access to really healthy modern leadership development content inside of any organization. That's why we have the 93 problem sitting on top of the 100% opportunity, right? It's just nuts. I think that two things are going to help us to get through that. And I really would like your feedback. So number one, the first thing that's going to help us is to acknowledge that that we pay a lot of people to lead inside an organization. And the models that help them to understand what good looks like are different depending upon the type of work that they're doing. So, and those models shouldn't just be random pieces of content, but they should be sequential understanding of this body of work first, this body of work second, this body of work third. Do you know what I mean? They
Mhm.
should be models of what good looks like, and it should create some, I think, kind of sequential understanding of how actually to do it. I think that's the first thing that's going to help us with this 93% confidence stacked on top of 100% exuberance kind of problem, right? Do you know what I mean? It's like help people to what understand what good looks like and to start to help them to lean into sequentially how to go about their work. I'm like, how hard can that be?
It's funny when you put it that way, it doesn't seem very hard. Yet we see it in industry every day, right? It is
Yeah.
it's a problem or an issue that we haven't fully solved. And I think so what I hear you is like it's the building blocks where again giving people the tools
Yes.
to do their job. And I think oftentimes to your point when you say what does good look like, and that to me is, people may be in a role and maybe doing a nice job, but they don't even know what they're missing,
Mhm.
right? Or that there's something else that they should be doing. And if they were doing it, they could be that much more effective, right? And so that's what I really like about your building blocks of like making sure people understand one, here's what you're, paid to do when you talk about paid to lead, right? And here's what that looks like. Here's, the capabilities or skill sets that are required there. And
Right.
then
And
that's when I
here's
can
the
also start to say like,
process. Like
yeah,
here,
it
and
is.
here's the process. And maybe you've never had to think about things like business unit intelligence before, but here's kind of a process, for a service leader or, a team leader for how to kind of think about that in a sequential way. I
Yeah.
think once you start to help people to understand what these building blocks are and the kind of the sequence of actions or practices that kind of make them up, I think it just goes, oh, it's like kind of riding this bike, right? It might be a little bit bumpy at first, but pretty soon you're going to kind of pick it up. So I think that's the first thing is these models of in the flow of work on behalf of our customers of leadership. First of all, they have to be representative of all people paid to lead inside an organization, and they have to provide enough guidance and support. Therefore, they must be sequenced So it's not just a random list of content, but you're starting to give them and build that confidence around, oh, these kinds of things first, those kinds of things second. And when I do that, I actually have start to produce like an agenda for my unit, or my team. And that all of a sudden starts to get other people excited about the work. And I'm starting to see their discretionary effort come forward and we all move forward. So that's kind of the first thing that I think is really important. The second thing that, I think I'm learning, I think everybody knows who's watching this, and Sharon, so, I lead this organization called Rejuvi, and Rejuvi is this organization that believes in these modern models, that these modern models need to be both on how do you help to build a compassionate human leader at the same time as you build a fierce business leader, and these models can come together kind of sequentially. So check, right? We first opportunity to be able to serve this 93% confidence problem stacked on top of 100% exuberance opportunity. But the other thing that I think we absolutely need is we need um, emerging tech to help us
Mm.
scale it.
Yes.
Because one of the things I'm hearing from you, Sharon, when you talk about it, is you worked in organizations that are really trying. Their head, heart, and hands are in the right place. And they understand that they pay multiple people to lead. And they can get kicked off with these more modern models of how to think about excellence. But even in those cases, we literally pay so many people to lead something in the organization. No organization has the ability to provide all of this one-on-one or one-on group sorts of guidance to people overall. And so we absolutely have to find a way to allow emerging tech to help us to scale these opportunities so that everyone goes, okay, just like you, will that be me one day? It's me. And okay, now that it's me, I'm
Now what?
feeling a little bit scared because I don't know what to do. And it sure looks like everybody else around the table knows what to do. Okay, now the organization is communicating to me about what good looks like. And not only do I get to be part of maybe some annual kind of kickoff process or kind of how we're thinking about it that year, but I have an opportunity to go develop myself independently, in alignment with this model. That's the other thing that I absolutely know that we need. You know, and part of me feels so you're nodding up and down, right?
Yeah.
We need emerging tech to help us. And when I say emerging tech, I think that, for a long time, I've been around long enough to say that when we used to think about training, it was always in person, right? That's how we started. And then we moved to asynchronous events, and we started to use, digital learning. But that's not really what I'm talking about here. I think that what has happened with kind of, I'm a baker, so I think about everything in terms of all the spices, all the AI, it can be that now that we have access to generative AI and agentic AI and predictive AI, and these tools are becoming so much more accessible, what they're really allowing organizations like Rejuvi to do is to say, take all those spices, right? Take all those new advanced tools and use them on behalf to help people engage with these modern models. That's what we have to do. Tech has to help us solve the problem, and it can now, of 93% of these people are not feeling, 93% of these leaders are not feeling confident about their roles, even though all of them are super, super excited. And organizations now can count on um, really wonderful AI tools to kind of help them with that self-serve opportunity. We've absolutely needed that piece.
I agree, and it's a space that I'm incredibly excited about. And so I've worked for very large, organizations in the past, and I've worked for some that are, smaller, still probably mid-sized to most people's standards, right? But in large organizations, right, you have talent development departments and you have more data that you can work with and data analysts and things like that. And even there, I still saw gaps, right, from a kind of a training and development perspective. Now you get into a smaller organization that you don't have those things, right? And but
That's
you
right.
still know you have training needs and development, but it's like, okay, first I need to even identify what do my people need, right? And then are there trends in that? Is that what one person needs, or do we have, you know, 1,500 or 2,000 people that have that need? And, where is that data and how do we look at that? Because we don't have all these extra people to help us with that.
Hmm.
And so I just think there's so many possibilities as we start looking at, AI. And again, my knowledge base is about here, but I'm super interested in probably, almost every day learn more about it.
Hmm.
But I just imagine this place that as a leader within a business, right, I can, kind of pretty quickly assess where I'm at, where my
Hmm.
team's at, where the broader organization is at, and then how do we get them what they need? And sometimes those are be quick, things that we can provide them, whether it be digital, but there may be things where we're like, hey, this is a larger gap and we do need to do some of that in person because I don't think
Right.
in person totally goes away
Right.
here, right?
Right. I love
Um,
what you're talking about. Sometimes there could be a digital solution in terms of moving forward. Sometimes there could be, an in-person. I think the most head, heart, and handful organizations, right? The ones that have kind of the strongest leadership cultures are going to be ones that use a multiple opportunities to reinforce the development of their leaders. It's just that they need to be starting from this new perspective of what leadership looks like, number one, and number two, know that behind the scenes, they can count on really robust tools to help people to understand what those modern models and those sequences of those building blocks or those sequences of actions or practices actually look like. And it can give them feedback in a really in a very personal surgical targeted kind of way. So I'm really encouraged by that. Of course, I knew this was going to happen. Um, we're almost out of time here, but kind of one last question for you, Sharon, as we kind of wrap up here today. Just based on your experience, and again, you do have just all of these wonderful years of experience. What counsel would you have for businesses preparing for this shift that we've been talking about today, which is, you know, all these people are super excited and kind of going, it is me one day. What kind of counsel, your final counsel for people be for serving those folks that are now exuberantly running into their roles?
I love that question. There's so many things going through my head, but I think the number one is what we kind of talked about earlier is how do we, or I guess the advice would be looking more holistic, right, at our people. And when we can invest in and kind of pour into, the masses of people, the payoff from the business side is just going to be exponential,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so that's part of looking for those tools and things that will help us focus on more than, the couple of people, that it's really about the whole
Hmm.
and, broadening their knowledge and their expertise, giving them the confidence that you talked about earlier that they may be lacking,
Hmm.
because I really think they're going to see the difference in the business results.
Yeah. You used a phrase as we were prepping for this, which is so much in line with what you're saying today. You said leadership is so much more. And so I want to, as I think about this question, final counsel for people watching this today, and how do they serve the people who are just jumping and exuberantly into these new leadership opportunities? I think it's acknowledging this phrase that Sharon used, leadership is so much more. It's so much more in terms of what it actually means. It's not only people leadership. It's so much more in terms of who we actually ask to do it each and every day. So be of service to them, help them get that and build their confidence. And number three, it's so much more in terms of the tools that we have available to help them be not only quick to insight, but to keep that energy and skin in the game over the course of their leadership roles. So thank you for that phrase. Leadership is so much more kind of stuck with me after we planned, just like this phrase that you introduced us to in season two, which was instead of solving for an N of one, solve for an N of many. So, Sharon, your head, heart, and hands have always been inspiring to me. I have a hunch they always will. So, thank you for being with Rejuvi today. Um, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. I always appreciate just having you and counsel and guidance. And yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
all good. Yep, all good. And everyone, thank you for checking in today and watching our recordings and our reels that we post on different social media sites. It's appreciated. Next time you walk through it, bring a friend so we can grow this wonderful capability through all parts and pieces of every single organization. We will be back next week with session number 32 of season 4. It's called Thrust Vectoring. That will be on August 21st. It will be a non-recorded session, so we will answer questions from the field if you'd like to check in that day. See you next week, and thank you for checking in. Rejuvi 45 appreciates it.